What's up, guys? Mr. Dan here. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another Martial Arts Monday review. This week we're taking a look at 1980's Killer Constable, directed by Chi-Hung and starring Chen, Kuan and Ku Feng. Ku Feng, of course, he's pretty much the MVP of the Shawscope Volume 3 set. And this film was also known as Karate Exterminators, terrible title, in the US. And also the DVD title was Lightning Kung Fu. But Killer Constable is the best description of the character, the main character of Lang Tian Yang, played by Chen Kuan and also of the movie, because essentially that's what he is. He is like a Qing era, Dynasty era Judge Dredd. And I got that little quote from the Shawscope Volume 3 booklet. I didn't make that up, but it's a pretty good description. The last we saw Chen Kuan was in my review of Blood Brothers, which is an excellent film. There he is right there. In that film, he played a kind of a headstrong, impetuous character. He's very much the opposite of that in here. He's large and in charge, stoic and commanding, and ruthless. And director Chi-Hung would direct a variety of films over the course of his career. Martial arts films, obviously, comedies, and having already directed a film in the 70s called The Killer Snakes, in the 80s, he would really veer right into horror, directing such films as Corpse Mania, which is a straightforward horror film, and the crazy and wild The Boxer's Omen, which was included in Shawscope Volume 2. This film, however, is pretty much a straightforward martial arts adventure film, and as they point out in the film notes section written by Ian Jane, the plot is very similar to like a spaghetti western, as it involves the hunt for some missing gold, and that's precisely, essentially what the plot line is. The constable is tasked with tracking down like a lot of missing gold by the Empress herself, the Empress Dowager, and it's been taken by bandits led by Feng Sha, who's played by Ku Feng, and they're a pretty formidable bunch of bandits. And of course, they're on the defense most of the time, so our heroes are constantly getting ambushed with all kinds of crazy traps and, you know, fire rings, and, you know, the bad guys have a whole cadre of archers, so they're constantly getting ambushed, and they certainly lose a few people along the way. Very early in the film, we learn how ruthless the Lang Tian Yang character is. He's basically chases down a wounded bandit and basically just chops him down to size, and one of his subordinates says, hey, you know, that guy was already wounded and maybe we could have gotten some information out of him, and he pretty much says, well, he's better dead than in jail. And the rest of the film is essentially a series of clashes between the constables and the bandits, all leading up to a conclusion where there's a little bit of a twist and all is not perhaps as it seems. We learn that the bandits maintain that, hey, there's no way you can recover all that money. We also see that maybe, you know, their motivations aren't just pure greed. And as far as the constables go, we learn that some of the younger constables think that the methods of the Chen Kuan character are just a little bit too severe, as they will actually behead the dead bandits, sometimes right in front of their families, as proof that they've been killed. So this movie is quite violent, just be warned. And then there's an older constable whose wife made him a special pair of boots to keep him warm. So usually when characters get a little sentimental like that in films like this, they might not be around long. You know how that goes. So all in all, this is a very entertaining film with really good martial arts action, but it's also a rather serious film. Regarding the Killer Constable especially, you know, it really makes you think about the cost of sort of blind allegiance to a leader. And when you have a character who does not have the ability to have some kind of self-reflection or thought process where he kind of challenges his mission, despite the fact that the consequences are so bloody, you know, it really makes for an interesting sort of dynamic. Chen Kuan in this film is excellent. He does an outstanding job acting in this role, and as does Ku Feng as the leader. I haven't really talked about him that much because I don't want to give too much away, but there's definitely a twist there involving a family member of one of the bandits and the Killer Constable, which kind of makes it interesting. So real quick, I just wanted to talk about some of the stunt work because I thought some of it was a little bit unusual and worth mentioning, and then I'm going to talk about some of the extra footage that they included from the Korean version of the film. So this film had some unusual stunt work. Some of it was a little bit clunky. You could see some wires, of course. You know, in this case, it was when the bad guys were firing arrows into the good guys. I guess they use wires to guide the arrows in. I don't really mind things like that. And then one of the good guys got riddled with about 20 arrows, and he must have had like this much padding under under his shirt. There's an interesting fire stunt where one of the constables becomes like engulfed in flame. He pulls himself out. He's smoldering. He has a few words with the killer constable, and then all of a sudden he's back on fire again. I don't know. But he grabs a couple of the bad guys and pulls them in and sacrifices himself. So I thought that was pretty interesting, considering you didn't often see fire stunts in these Shaw Brothers films, and they must have had 3 guys in fire suits for that scene because they were pretty much completely engulfed. So really, some pretty good stunt work for sure. Now, as far as the Korean version of the film, you know, they shot these films in South Korea, so they would have Korean assistant directors and so forth. They really, in this film, it really seemed like they wanted to show off the Korean countryside to the Korean audience. So I actually reshot some of the scenes. So some of the scenes are almost identical, except rather than a nighttime scene, it's in the daytime. And I think it was because they wanted to show, like I said, the Korean countryside. There's a whole there's a whole other subplots involving the emperor, not just the empress, but I guess the gold was supposed to be going back and forth between China and Korea. So he said, like, you must recover the gold for the good of both nations. So there's a lot of characters wearing traditional Korean clothing of the time. And then there's a whole separate character who's supposed to be like a bodyguard who's mute. And then I guess there was a scene later where it's like, oh, you can talk after all. Yeah, whole fight scenes that weren't in this version. the version that was shown in Hong Kong and made it to DVD in the States. As a movie, I think the Korean version would seem a little bit longer and convoluted. That's my guess. You know, again, I just saw the missing scenes and the reshot scenes, not the whole movie. And it is like VHS quality, but that's all they could recover. So that's what we get. But it was very interesting to watch and to think about how they kind of retooled the movie for specific audiences. You know, they really wanted to give something back to the Korean audience, you know, in exchange for being able to film there so many times. What are your thoughts about the Killer Constable? Let me know in the comments below, and come back again next Monday for another Martial Arts Monday review. Thanks.